It's Tuesday, June 13th, and this is now on HNN.
This whole country has been brainwashed.
A former president facing federal charges on Chelsea Jones, with more on this historic arraignment of Donald Trump and how his presidential bid moves forward.
An investigation is underway after a motorcyclist is critically injured after plunging down a cliff in East Oahu.
New at noon, former City Council Chair Hokulea Anderson appears in court, charged in a domestic abuse case.
We're not closing any lanes.
Work is underway on a major highway construction project in Windward, Oahu.
These stories, plus Mahealani Richardson catches up with some of the original Hokulea crew members from 1976 who made the trek to Alaska. Details coming up on This Is Now. Aloha and good afternoon. About an hour ago, former President Trump's plane took off from Florida bound for New Jersey. That's where he's expected to make an appearance at his golf club in Bedminster following the events of today.
All of this is happening after his arraignment before a federal judge in Florida, where he pleaded not guilty to 37 federal counts connected to his alleged mishandling of classified documents. Now, in the courtroom, he was joined by several of his attorneys, and among the charges include willful retention of national defense information and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Chelsea Jones has the latest from Florida.
Former President Donald Trump stopped at a Miami area restaurant following his arraignment on felony charges.
We have a country that's got nothing but problems. We're a nation in decline, and then they do this stuff.
Earlier, a lawyer for the former president entered a plea of not guilty to all 37 counts. He is accused of illegally retaining classified documents, storing them at his Mar-a-Lago home, and conspiring to hide them from the government after it subpoenaed him to get them back.
What we are witnessing today is the blatant and unapologetic weaponization of the criminal justice system.
We love Trump! We love Trump!
Supporters and protesters brought their opinions of the case.
This whole country has been brainwashed.
Sad day in America.
While this is one of several investigations into Trump, this is the first time the Justice Department has brought charges against a former president. In announcing the indictment Friday, Special Counsel Jack Smith maintained the case is not politically motivated.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
Trump, who is the current frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination, has seen his poll numbers go up since his indictment. Chelsea Jones, CBS News, Miami.
For more on all of this, we welcome now HNN's Washington correspondent John Decker. John, thanks for being with us here on This Is Now. First question, there's so much to unfold in this legal process, but what is the next steps for former President Trump in all of this?
The next step is going to the case itself. So we know who the judge who has been assigned this case. Her name is Judge Eileen Collins. She was actually named to her job as a federal judge by Donald Trump in 2020. So she will call both sides together, the prosecution from the DOJ, defense lawyers from Donald Trump's team, to determine the calendar of events for this trial, including a start date. So this will be the first pre-trial hearing that will happen likely in the next few weeks.
Now, a lot of the talk around this case is the fact that former President Trump is charged with violating the Espionage Act. Can you explain what exactly that means?
Yes, absolutely. You know, it sounds like, just based upon the title of that law, the Espionage Act, that the former president is charged with spying or giving classified material to our adversaries. That is not the case. The former president is charged with 31 counts of willfully retaining national defense information. That part of the law falls under the Espionage Act, and that is the reason why the Espionage Act is implicated in this particular case.
Got it. Now, John, it seems like this is sort of a case of deja vu. Of course, we just saw Trump in a New York courthouse in relation to the hush money scheme, and now he's here in Miami appearing before another judge. First off, in terms of severity, can you talk about how the New York case and this Miami case differs? And secondly, what is the political impact that all of this will have on Donald Trump?
Well, this is a more serious case, the one happening at the federal level that's taking place in South Florida. It's more serious also if you factor in what happens if the former president is convicted in Manhattan, what happens if the former president is convicted in South Florida related to the federal trial. The Manhattan case, a conviction may not even lead to any prison time. However, the Florida case, the case being brought by the special counsel involving these classified documents, national defense information, a guilty verdict there would likely lead to prison time and conviction on one count in particular. That's conspiracy to obstruct justice. Maximum sentence for that particular crime is 20 years in prison. So it's much more severe in terms of the consequences for the former president, the special counsel case versus that case brought by the Manhattan district attorney.
Got it. Now, two of Trump's lawyers resigned this past week. Why is Donald Trump having difficulty in terms of putting together his legal team?
Well, he needs to get a Florida-based lawyer, number one. He has one already on the team, but he needs at least one other. And the difficulty is the best lawyers in South Florida, whether you're talking about Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, they're typically associated with large law firms. And you can't just simply bring on a client, certainly a Donald Trump, without running it through the process, putting it through the committee. And what happens here with large law firms, they see first if there are any conflicts associated with other clients that they already have retained. And in addition to that, they have to factor in their reputation, their reputational potential damage by bringing on Donald Trump. I think that is the biggest reason why it is difficult for the former president to bring on a very well-respected, high-profile, white-collar defense lawyer.
And last question to you, John. Any comment from President Biden or the White House on all of the events happening today?
No comment at all from the White House press secretary, no comment at all from President Biden, nor should there be. Now that this is an ongoing criminal matter, the President of the United States, the people that speak on his behalf, should not weigh in at any way as it relates to this particular matter. They should not influence this matter in any way. So I would not expect to see the former president, the current president, I should say, Joe Biden, or anybody that speaks on behalf of Joe Biden, to weigh in on this criminal matter until it's concluded.
HNN's Washington correspondent John Decker, thank you so much for all the insight on all of the happenings surrounding Donald Trump.
Former Honolulu City Council Chair Ikaika Anderson appeared in district court today. Last month, the 45-year-old was charged with alleged abuse of a family member after officials say his 34-year-old girlfriend reported a domestic violence situation to a friend who then called police. Anderson is pleading not guilty. His attorney said the arrest was based on a one-sided accusation of a misdemeanor offense and claimed no crime was committed. Anderson is due back in court in 2 weeks.
In East Oahu, a 22-year-old motorcyclist was critically injured after plunging nearly 100 feet from a cliff in Hawaii Kai last night. Police said it happened around 8:30 p.m. near the Lanai Lookout. The biker was heading eastbound on Kalanianaole Highway when he hit a guardrail and fell down the cliff. The rider was wearing a helmet at the time of the crash, according to authorities. Paramedics treated and took the man to a hospital. HPD says speed appears to be a contributing factor. It's unknown yet if drugs or alcohol were also factors. The investigation is ongoing.
Work is underway on a major highway construction project in Windward, Oahu. A roundabout will replace the intersection of Kahekili and Kamehameha highways in Kahaluu. Casey Lund takes us there.
The State Department of Transportation hopes that by adding this roundabout here at Kahekili and Kamehameha Highway, that they'll reduce or possibly completely eliminate the number of serious and fatal left turn accidents. That's people both coming from Kamehameha, turning onto Kahekile in that direction, and then coming down Kahekile, trying to turn left on Kamehameha. Now, the project started on Wednesday, and for now, the director of the DOT, Ed Sniffen, says you don't need to expect any serious delays.
So we're not closing any lanes. Contractors ensuring that we protect our drains from any debris that might go into our drain system. And actually, we're going to try and minimize the lane closures in all of the areas where we can do work outside of our roadway.
Planning for the project has been in the works for 2 decades. Construction expected to last about 18 months. The Department of Transportation, again, says the main goal is to make the area safer for pedestrians and for vehicles. But we talked to residents in this area who say they think it'll have the opposite effect.
It's going to be so much worse.
Yeah.
And why? Why do they want a roundabout? This is, a main road, and traffic has to flow. We're coming home after work, and everybody now is taking the back roads to try to avoid that little bump.
Yeah.
With the roundabout, everybody's going to take the back roads, and that's bad.
Absolutely not. It's absurd. It's absurd. We need a left turn lane at Waiheia Road. They added this merge lane over here for the people coming out of Cam Highway. That worked really well. This is a waste. It's going to cause massive traffic jam.
DOT Director Ed Sniffen says data shows that adding a signal here wouldn't have eliminated enough of the potential for those crashes. He points to similar roundabouts and success they've seen in places like Moanalua, the Big Island, and Maui.
We considered signals in the past, then we looked at roundabouts, and even with signals, we see those high-speed T-bones occur. When we put a roundabout in place, we eliminate those types of fatalities. So we put the roundabout in place for this area specifically because we want to make sure that we address the safety issues there.
Again, the bulk of that work here, the kind of work that's going to cause traffic delays, hasn't started just yet. The state says they'll be working between the hours of 8:30 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, only Monday through Friday. Reporting in Kahului, I'm Casey Lund. For now, we'll send things back to you.
Now a warning, this next story contains some disturbing details. A man's death involving unexplained circumstances has his mother wondering if her family was victimized again because of their connection to a high-profile federal prosecution. Our chief investigative reporter, Lynn Kawano, has the exclusive story.
Janet Salas says her family has been targeted for years. She found the body of one of her sons last month in the brush in Kalailoa. Her other son was murdered in state custody. He was a witness in the prosecution against alleged crime boss Michael Miskey.
Learning to live life without them, and dealing with the pain.
Janet Salas has no more living children. Her oldest son, Michael Salas, had been homeless. The 34-year-old's body was wrapped in a blanket, tossed in a sinkhole, and covered by brush in a remote area of Kalailoa, a homeless camp hidden from the road. She was told by others in the camp that he hung himself from a tree. Honolulu police have classified the case as an unattended death, and Salas says HPD told her no foul play was suspected.
You're telling me that no foul play means my son hung himself, he died, got off the whatever he hung himself on, wrapped himself in a blanket and scooted himself to the hole. It's a crime scene. Rather it's he hangs himself or not.
Salas says her son worried about others in the camp who may have a connection to Michael Miskey. The alleged leader of a criminal enterprise is awaiting trial in a suspected murder-for-hire plot that includes charges of kidnapping, racketeering, and obstruction. Miskey was arrested in 2020. Court documents unsealed last year showed her son, James Salas, was a confidential source who reported to the FBI and HPD that in the summer of 2016, he saw 21-year-old missing man Jonathan Frazier being tortured in a Kalihi home by men associated with Miskey. Salas also reported, according to the court records, that days later he saw a pot of boiling water with large bones on the stove at the same house. James Salas was murdered in OCCC 3 years later after being picked up for a probation violation.
James, this is mommy, James. I love you.
His mother says he had warned the jail repeatedly that he was in danger and needed to be in solitary because of the information he provided to authorities. Instead, he was put in general population and was beaten to death.
He had also refused housing assignments on 2 occasions because he feared that there were gang members in the housing units where they wanted to send him. The camera in the dorm of Annex 1 where they had placed James, which was general population, was broken.
Taxpayers will now pay Janet Salas $700,000 after a settlement in a wrongful death lawsuit. No one was ever arrested for her son's murder in OCCC.
My first son, he's not here anymore. Nobody got prosecuted for that. This is my second son. I only had 2. Yeah. And I'd be damned if nobody getting prosecuted for this one.
She hopes HPD looks further into Michael's death. HPD declined to comment, saying the investigation is ongoing.
Even if Michael hung himself, right, you know, his body had been desecrated because it had been moved from wherever it was, wrapped in a blanket and placed in a ditch in Kalailoa. So that all by itself is a crime.
State lawmakers approved the $700,000 settlement with Salas. She's expected to get the taxpayer-funded payoff later this summer. I'm Lynn Kawano, Hawaii News Now.
The Navy says it's made dramatic progress cleaning out its Red Hill well that is contaminated with fuel. The state is allowing the Navy to reduce the volume of treated water it's releasing in the Halava Stream. Until recently, the Navy had been releasing up to 5 million gallons of treated water per day into the stream. That's how much it had been skimming and filtering to remove petroleum and keep it from the aquifer. The Navy says it's working and the plume is shrinking, so the Navy is now allowed to release less than 2 million gallons of treated water into the stream a day.
It has successfully worked at taking the top off the water table to remove any free product that's in the Red Hill shaft. And it's really been quite a good news story because over the last 6 months or so, we're only getting about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon each month.
We don't have good information. There are insufficient number of monitoring wells for us to know the full extent of the damage.
Since the Department of Health ordered the pumping of the Red Hill shaft 18 months ago, more than 2.3 billion gallons of fresh filtered water has gone down this channel into the ocean.
New today, the number of plaintiffs in the lawsuit over the Red Hill contamination is doubling. 187 new people have been added in court documents filed today. We're told 1,000 additional claims will also be filed in the coming days for Red Hill victims. In previous court hearings, the government admitted negligence, but they want to streamline the cases.
2 town hall meetings are set up by lawyers for people impacted by the fuel spill. One is set for June 18th at 6 p.m. at the AM Vets West Oahu Veterans Center. The other happens June 20th at 6 p.m. at Ka'ehi Lagoon Memorial. Meanwhile, one of the Navy leaders at the center of the Red Hill controversy has been tapped to become the Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Samuel Paparo is currently the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. He's been recommended for the new position by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Plaintiffs who have sued the government over the Red Hill fuel spill want to depose Paparo about what he knew about the spill. But the Navy is fighting that with a motion to quash his testimony set for June 21st. Critics call his nomination a, quote, slap in the face to every family impacted by Red Hill, end quote. The president still needs to formally nominate Paparo, and Congress needs to approve the pick before he would take the new role. But there's another complicating factor. Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville is blocking nearly all senior military promotions. He is protesting the Defense Department's policy to pay for travel when a service member has to go out of state to get an abortion or other reproductive care.
Our Mahealani Richardson continues her special reports with the crew of the Hokulea. She, along with about 90 others from Hawaii, are experiencing firsthand the beauty and indigenous culture of Alaska.
Aloha, Ash and Dylan. You know, as we've been sharing stories of the Hokulea and her crew that are about to embark on a 4-year Pacific-wide voyage, we keep hearing this term called va'a life. That's canoe life. And within the canoe life and the crew members, you know, they are having to prepare for every situation. But they also have to be prepared to switch directions on a moment's notice. And that's what happened yesterday with the original crew members from 1976 3 of the original crew members who made that very first journey from Hawaii to Tahiti back in 1976. So we went down to the dock there where the Hokulea has been for the past few days, and we were able to talk to John Cruz, Shorty Bertleman, and Billy Richards about that very first voyage in 1976. And we asked them, what did they think about being here in Alaska after almost 50 years of voyaging with the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and if they could share with us one memory from that very first voyage in 1976. And I can tell you, it was an extraordinary conversation. It was emotional. So we will share that extraordinary interview on our evening newscast and on our website, HawaiiNewsNow.com. Reporting from Juneau, I'm Mahealani Richardson, Hawaii News Now. Ash and Dylan, back to you.
Thank you, Mahel. Let's take you live outside now on this Aloha Tuesday. This is not Honolulu, guys. This is actually Newark, New Jersey. Former President Trump's plane will be landing here in a couple of hours. Let's check on our forecast, though. What's happening here in the islands? Let's send it over to our friend, Guy Hagi.
The rain will be limited. It'll be moving pretty quickly because of those breezy trade winds that have also settled in. So you can see a generous amount of showers coming through from time to time, but also a fair bit of dry weather too, especially for those leeward areas. So here's your 7-day forecast. Get ready for a long stretch of really gorgeous, comfortable weather because of those trade winds hanging in all the way into next week. Humidity levels will be comfortable. Air quality is going to be good, except for parts of Hawaii Island. They have to deal with the fog, right? So today, passing showers, but still a fair bit of sunshine. That's why the temperature is running to about 87 degrees. Slightly fewer showers by tomorrow, but with those trade winds continuing, we'll see some splashes from time to time, mainly for windward sides, occasionally spilling over to leeward areas. And as we head into the weekend, we're expecting even drier conditions heading in, although those trade winds aren't going to change very much. They might be fluctuating speed a little bit from time to time, but for the most part, the trade wind weather will continue into the middle of next week, if not a little bit longer than that.
Time to check out some news from the feeds. And now this next story might get your skin crawling a little bit. It kind of looks like something out of a horror film. Millions of crickets, more specifically Mormon crickets, have invaded several Nevada towns. For more on this, let's send it over to Shara Park.
They're just gross. They look like spiders. Yeah, and they poop everywhere.
Thousands upon thousands of Mormon crickets creeping across Elko right now.
We just stay inside. We don't go outside.
They're in fields, roaming the streets. They're even climbing the hospital walls.
It got to the point where just to get patients into the hospital, we had people out there with leaf blowers, with brooms. At one point, we even did have a tractor with a snow plow on it just to try to push the piles of crickets and keep them moving on their way.
The crickets made their way into town on Monday and within days had taken over some areas of the community.
They're in their migratory phase, if you want to call it that, and they're moving, and Mormon crickets can move up to a mile a day.
Jeff Knight is an entomologist for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. He says the crickets have a 4 to 6 year cycle and then they disappear for a while. The dormant period for Elko ended in 2019, so now they're back.
I do sympathize with people because, you know, it is kind of overwhelming to have these kind of populations, but they will go away.
And they drop from the ceiling down. And yeah, they're gross. They're super gross.
For Precious Drake, the crickets can't move on fast enough. She draws the line when they're inside her home.
I have a electric outlet that doesn't have a cover on it. And somehow one of them got in and was looking at me when I woke up.
Oh, those Mormon crickets.
That was amazing.
Oh, man. Now, I did some research on them. They aren't a threat to humans. They don't bite. They're not venomous. So that's some good news there.
Oh, boy.
They're just really a pest. They are crunchy. I've heard of some people, some cultures eating them.
Do you remember when the grasshoppers took over Las Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Gosh, what's
Similar
happening
thing.
in Nevada?
Thank you all so much for joining us here on This Is Now.